I'm Dave Helman, and the football gods are impassive at best, outright cruel at worst. This is our punishment for daring to be excited about a Thursday night football game. No quippy weekend jokes for you, not after Thursday night football this week. It was the much anticipated meeting of the Baltimore Ravens and the Cincinnati Bengals. The Ravens do get a win, 34-20. The delivery, not quite as good as the anticipation heading into this one. Let's make sure we give the Ravens props. Look, things happen in football. You play the game in front of you. You play the circumstances you're dealt. You win the game. The Ravens improved to 8-3. They will be guaranteed to be on top of the AFC North for another week, no matter what happens elsewhere in their division. But the big story of the night, injuries, lots of them, lots of significant ones. None more significant than the loss of Cincinnati quarterback Joe Burrow to what head coach Zach Taylor called a sprained wrist late in the first half. Joe Burrow dishes out a touchdown pass to Joe Mixon in the flat to give the Bengals a 10-7 lead with just under 6 minutes to play in the first half. And you can see him grabbing his throwing arm after the touchdown pass. Maybe cause for concern. Not sure how serious the situation is. Amazon telecast shows replays of Burrow getting tackled earlier in the drive. Maybe he hurts his wrist. Like Zach Taylor said, it's a sprain. The real cause for concern, though, comes when the television cameras show Burrow on the sideline a few minutes later, trying to throw a football, trying to warm up to go back in the game. And in the act of throwing, he drops the ball and grimaces as he's trying to bring his arm forward. Seen consulting with staff, seen going back to the locker room, coming back out. He finishes the game on the sideline. Don't want to speculate too much, but when the star quarterback, one of the faces of the entire NFL, is in so much pain trying to throw a football that he drops it and is done for the night after that, it's hard not to have bad vibes. I don't know what else to say. There's not, recording this right after the game, there's not a good way to know a whole lot else. Zach Taylor did say it's a sprained wrist. Hopefully the weekend off helps. Hopefully this isn't the beginning of a very long absence for Joe Burrow. I know Twitter and the internet, there's a controversy brewing about a video that shows Joe Burrow arriving in Baltimore with some sort of sleeve or brace, whatever you want to call it, on his wrist on Wednesday before the game. I suppose there's going to be questions about whether the Bengals knew his arm was injured. I personally don't really worry too much about it. Joe Burrow clearly, he took all of the practice reps in the short week leading up to this game. If he was remotely healthy, he was always going to play. That's how football players are wired. I'm personally not so much worried about that as I am just about Joe Burrow's health. This is, again, one of the best and most visible players in the NFL. He's Cincinnati's best hope for putting together a viable run at the playoffs. I'm not sure I see this team going anywhere meaningful without him. So, again, I'm not going to speculate about it. I'm just going to wish Joe Burrow a speedy recovery. Hopefully this isn't something that derails his season beyond one night, but it was unsettling to watch him not be able to throw a football. That is what he's paid $270 something million to do. It wasn't just Burrow, unfortunately, though. I'm sure, like I said, I'm sure the Ravens will point out to you injuries happen in this game. There's a 100% chance of them. They lost star tight end Mark Andrews to an ankle injury on the first possession of the night. And though maybe you had some hope that this was going to be okay because he was able to hobble off to the sideline, Ravens head coach John Harbaugh says afterwards that it is a likely to be a season-ending injury. Haven't seen specifically what it was, but I'm going to trust the head coach at his word that this is a significant loss. We may not see Mark Andrews again this year. Obviously, I don't need to say that is a blow for the Baltimore Ravens. Mark Andrews, one of the best handful of tight ends in football. He's been the most consistent thing about the Ravens passing game for the last 5 years. Second on the team in receiving yards heading into this game. Easily first on the team in receiving touchdowns with 6. He had 2 catches for 23 yards on the first possession of the game. Looked like he was heading toward another big night when he was tackled down in the red zone. Done for the night. The list doesn't end there. Lamar Jackson, a series or two later, tweaked his ankle. He seemed to be okay. He finished the game, but it did seem to bother him at times during the night. He kind of slid and stumbled a couple of times on scrambles against the Bengals. So, like I said, he finished the game. He seems to be okay, but something to watch when one of the most explosive quarterbacks in the league injures his ankle. Cincinnati also lost budding star cornerback Cameron Taylor-Britt to a quad injury. They lost defensive tackle BJ Hill to a knee injury. And even with the game well in hand, the Ravens led this 34-13 before a garbage time touchdown to Jamar Chase. Even with the game well in hand, Odell Beckham injures his shoulder after a long gain. We'll get more to Odell's big night, but the broadcast says he's taken to get x-rays toward the tail end, kind of puts a damper on his 116-yard night, his first 100-yard game since the 2021 NFC Championship game. So Odell Beckham really starting to hit his stride, and then he injures his shoulder. I'm choosing to believe it's a good sign that Beckham was healthy enough to do the post-game show with Amazon afterward and go out and talk to the broadcast crew. I'm sure the Ravens are hoping that his tests and evaluations come back clean, especially losing Mark Andrews for the season, hope potentially, at least according to John Harbaugh. You're going to need something else. Obviously, Zay Flowers having a fantastic rookie season, but you're going to need something to supplement the loss of Mark Andrews. Odell Beckham has had moments this season. He actually seems to be warming up a little bit. Touchdowns in back-to-back games heading into this one, and then he blows up for 100 yards. He looked explosive. He looked shifty. He looked like the guy we remember from when he was a New York Giant and even a Cleveland Brown. That could be a big deal for the Ravens, and there's no time like the present for him to keep it up if Mark Andrews is out for the rest of the year. Okay, I think that catches us up on all of the drastic injuries. I mean, it's not just that guys got hurt, but we're talking about guys that'll have a huge impact on both of these teams' seasons. In the meantime, the actual game we watched saw way more of Jake Browning than I think anyone was anticipating seeing all season. The Bengals' backup quarterback out of the University of Washington had one career attempt when Burrow exited. He enters, he throws for 101 yards, hits Jamar Chase for the garbage time touchdown to cut it to 14 points. That comes way after the game was out of hand. Honestly, I don't think Browning was bad given the circumstances, but it just goes to show how hard it is for an NFL team to win, and particularly against the best opponents with a backup quarterback. I think the Bengals had roughly 90 yards of offense without Burrow. Their longest game without Burrow was a 34-yard defensive pass interference flag. Underthrown ball by Browning gets bailed out by DPI, and that set the Bengals up for a field goal. Up until garbage time when the game's out of hand, that's about as good as it got for the Bengals. That's why I say if Burrow is out for a lengthy amount of time, hopefully not, but Bengals are now 5-5, and it is hard to imagine them doing a whole heck of a lot better if they don't have their quarterback. My goal is not to take credit away from the Ravens. Like I said, deal with the circumstances you got, and they were dominant in the second half. They go to halftime with an 11-point lead. They bled the second half out. There was never any doubt after the injury that they were going to pull away. But it's just a storyline you can't ignore. Has a tremendous impact on the outcome of this game. It's going to determine everything about the rest of the Bengals season. We'll see what happens when he gets back from injury, but the schedule doesn't exactly let up. You got another division game right after this against Pittsburgh, road trip to face Jacksonville. So that's two opponents that are well above 500. Hopefully you'll have Joe Burrow to help you out. As for Baltimore, just stack them up, man. Doesn't matter how you get them. 8-3 on top of the division. They face the Chargers next. Sucks to lose Mark Andrews, but if you get Odell Beckham going in this passing game, I think you probably feel pretty good about that. I think you'll feel even better if you can get left tackle Ronnie Stanley back. This is where the Ravens typically are at this time of year. They've done a good job of getting well out ahead of the pack in this part of the season. The interesting thing here is going to be finishing. In years past, unfortunately, it's been Lamar Jackson getting injured. Hopefully that won't be the case. He avoided injury tonight, and the Ravens get a big home win in the division. They'll be happy with it any way they can get it.